Welcome to another Charles Gourmet podcast. We have Joel Turner with us today. Joel's a very interesting guy. So he was on Joe Rogan. If you didn't listen to his podcast, you can find him at mindiq.com. He's a master educator in mental control and shot control. He's the founder at the Turner model, which we're going to discuss about today. He's all about putting your mind into a flow state before you actually shoot a bow to hit the target. If you ever tried shooting a target, it's really hard. A lot of people panic, right? And Joel has a formula for that. So, Joel, I'm glad to have you on. Tell us a bit more about yourself and what you're up to nowadays.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Charles. When you talk about that flow state, it was, I grew up shooting a bow. I started shooting a bow when I was 7 years old. And I didn't realize, of course, at that time when I was a little kid, I didn't realize what is happening in the brain when you actually cause an explosion. And, that explosion, people say, well, a bow doesn't really explode like a firearm does, right? There's no real explosion, but it's actually worse with archery because an explosion is nothing more than a release of energy. So when you're holding a bow at full draw, your mind wants to get rid of that stress. It does not want you in that stress. And we develop in our minds, we develop this anticipation of the bow going off. And so it leads to all kinds of things. So there I am at 7 years old, shooting a bow and loving watching the arrow fly, but so frustrated because I can't actually aim at the target without letting the arrow go early. Right. And it was this, back in those days, this is like early 80s, right? So nobody really knew what was happening in the brain with shooting. There was good shooters, but just like, and even nowadays, top level athletes have a real hard time explaining how they do what they do. And if you don't know how you do what you do, you can't possibly repeat it. Like you may have a good day, you may have a bad day. So there I was at 7 years old, 8 years old, into my teen years, loved shooting a bow, but was not that great at it. And I was having all kinds of these target panic issues. And it wasn't until I became a law enforcement officer that I really had to buckle down and figure this stuff out. And, shooting has been a very pivotal part of my life, my entire life, well, since I was 7. And it's just been, it's been very frustrating. But now that I've done the correct research and I've researched the correct sciences and packaged them into what we now know as shot IQ and mind IQ and the Turner model. And now we use shooting in a different way. Like I teach people basically how to think in high stress events, whatever that is for you. It just so happens that archery, shooting a bow and arrow, is one of the highest levels of human concentration there is. But most people don't know how to concentrate. So that's what we bring to you in those platforms.
Love that. And let's talk about your time in the law enforcement. What were scenarios in which you really had to calm your mind down and reach full flow rapidly so that you actually don't get killed?
Well, you're dealing with that constantly as a cop, and there's certain situations you get in. There's flow state, I would say, for certain situations. For actually most situations, you have to put your conscious mind in a certain place at a certain time, but you have to know how to do that. But then there's precision environments where you find yourself in a precision environment, and that's not flow state. That's one directed task at a time. And so, a good law enforcement officer would be able to switch mental games. And we'll talk about the definition of the mental game. You have to be able to recognize what game needs to be played instantly and then execute that game. And, but again, most people don't know what the definition of the mental game is. So they throw that term around. Oh, I'm working on my mental game. I'm working on my mental game of golf or work or whatever it may be. But unless you've defined it, you're trying to play a game where you don't know who the opponent is. You don't know what the rules of the game are. You don't know where the game is played. And you don't know when the game starts. You don't know what a win feels like. So how can you possibly win that game? So we've went deep into what is the mental game of just about everything, of life itself, right? So we'll get
And
to
what
that.
are these different situations as a cop? Because you weren't to SWAT, right? Like
Right.
I believe at some point. So that's like getting in houses of drug lords with AK-47s, puncturing through walls, breaking windows in team, right? You need to
Yeah.
keep your shit together because your team will also absorb that energy, right? So what games were you playing back then, and how did you actually succeed and win and didn't get yourself killed or teammates killed?
Yeah, so you have to. I mean, on the SWAT, I spent 19 years on the SWAT team. Most of that time was as the sniper team leader, and then at the end of my career on SWAT, I was the actual overall team leader. So, you have to be thinking constantly on what the scenario is. Like if somebody's shooting at you, who's got cover, who doesn't have cover. How are you going to return fire? Can you return fire legally? All these things, and our SWAT team, even though it was a fairly small team, it was 24 people on our team. It was a fairly busy team, and a lot of teams that are out there don't have to do actual hostage rescues just because it hasn't happened to them yet or whatever. But in my 19 years on the team, we did 4 actual hostage rescues, and only one of those was a sniper resolution, which was my shooting that I explained on the Rogan show. And it's a situation where, you've made a decision that you have to stop this person's actions. And when you get to the actual shot, that's when you have to start the mental game, right? So let me just define it for your listeners. So the mental game, after I got on the Rogan podcast, it was like people were calling me from all walks of life, and they wanted to know how they would apply what we do at Shot IQ and Mind IQ to their particular problem. And I didn't have the answers. Like when I was on the Rogan podcast, I didn't have the mental game equation. I didn't know what the ultimate skill of the human being was. I didn't know the term thoughts aren't thinking, right? So we'll explain all those today. But first and foremost, what is the mental game? The mental game is understanding where, when, and how to direct your conscious mind into a specific task at a specific moment. So you treat it as an equation. So when it comes down to, like, let's say a shot on this particular hostage rescue, where do you need your conscious mind? Well, in the first portion of that shot, when I've got the bad guy is behind a 3-year-old girl, right? He's using her as a human shield. So I had to remember the first mental game. Where did I need my conscious mind? I needed it in the aim, because with the particular weapon system that I was using, you have to aim 2.5 or 2.7 inches higher than where you want to hit. And so that's the first where. And when do you need it there? You need it there when you make the decision to shoot. And how do you put it there? The how of the mental game equation is always speech. Speech is what moves thoughts from the limbic system of the brain to the prefrontal cortex, where thinking occurs, right? And thinking is speech. Speech is your conscious mind working, right? So you have to be able to switch. And then when it came to the actual shot, I had to switch my mental game, right? Now, where do I need my conscious mind? It was in the aim. When I got that right, I have to switch. Now, the next mental game is, where do I need it? In the trigger pressure increase. When? After I make the decision to increase my presence, which is like, here I go during a shot. And then how do I put it there? You got to talk about the trigger pressure increase, right? The how is always speech. So you take this, I've taken this equation all over the country now, I do speaking engagements for all different sorts of groups, corporations, businesses, where I actually get them to give me your problem. What's your biggest problem? And then we'll plug it into the mental game equation. Like if it's a sales team, doing cold calls, right? How do you get, the top salesperson? People ask them all kinds of questions, but they never ask them, what do you say before you pick up the phone? Because thoughts aren't thinking, right? Thoughts are what you hear. Thinking is what you say. So your thoughts have no instruction. Thoughts have no strategy. Thoughts cannot solve a problem. So if you're sitting there and you got to do a cold call and you're expecting to get yelled at again on the phone, well, if your thoughts are, oh man, I'm just going to get yelled at again, you won't pick up the phone because your thoughts are louder than your thinking, right? And when we get in these high stress events, no matter what it is, if it's a car wreck or whatever, your thought volume gets higher than your thinking volume. Your thinking volume is your voice, and it's got to be the loudest one in the room. So there's that salesperson, they're looking at the phone going, man, I don't want to call this person again, right? But then they go, okay, I'm going to do it. Pick up the phone, right? Just them saying that, that's the skill, right? So if I was to ask you, Charles, what is the one skill that has gotten you through everything in your life? It's gotten you through every stressful situation, gets you out of bed in the morning. What is that one life skill?
Mindset, grit, self-talk. I'm huge on that.
Okay, but you say grit or self-talk. Which one's the skill?
Well, I think self-talk is grit. It is like something that I've learned, right? Like you said, the thinking is prehistoric. I don't control it, but my self-talk, I do control it. Getting out of bed at that point is somewhat easy because I created a very nice life for myself, but I had to go through very hard shit to get where I am today. And yeah, mindset, self-talk is pretty much everything.
Right. So let's dive in a little deeper and that's great that you answered that way, because most people will just give me grit. They'll give me mental toughness. They'll give me perseverance. They give me discipline. These are all the skills that they believe have gotten them to where they are today. But it's not those things. Like, how do you get discipline? How do you get grit, right? You get that from not just self-talk, but self-instruction, right?
Yeah, conditioning.
The ultimate skill of the human being is the ability to get loud in your head with the right words at the right moment. Whatever that is for you, right? That's the ultimate skill. And now that we understand, it's been right in front of our face the whole time, right? But most people, like, you're obviously a pretty smart guy because you realize that it's the self-instruction that has gotten you to where you are today. You said you had to go through some hard stuff, right? Well, how did you get yourself through it? You got loud with the right words at the right moment, because you can't control your thoughts, but you can always control your thinking, right? So understanding that and knowing that that's the ultimate skill, that's what we use archery for now, because archery is a very difficult thing for your mind to comprehend. For you to control an archery shot, especially in a high stress event, be that a shoot off in a tournament for $100,000 or a giant screaming bull elk in front of you, whatever that may be, it's very stressful to your mind. But now you use those situations in a different way. You change the approach. You invite those situations because it gives you reps in the ultimate skill. It gives you reps in getting loud with the right words at the right moment. And you might have to experience a few of those situations before you have the right words and the right moment. But it's that ability to get loud in your head. And I've talked to Major League Baseball teams. I've talked to high-level CEOs, high-level military operators, all these folks. And the problem is, again, they don't know how they do what they do because they've never been asked the question, what do you say and when do you say it?
Right. And does it have to be, is it more impactful if it's out loud? I self-talk to myself sometimes in stressful situation, and my wife may think I'm crazy in these instances. Is that more impactful than if I'm talking to myself in my head, which is all the time?
So the stuff that's going all the time is this constant battle between thoughts and thinking, right? But as soon as you go out loud, you've automatically overridden the thoughts when you go out loud, because you don't speak your thoughts. You speak, like when you're working yourself through something, you're speaking your thinking, right? So like I have people do this all the time. I call it commentary skill building, where they're working themselves through an archery shot out loud. And when you do that, it instantly cuts out all of the thoughts, because they wouldn't say, okay, I'm drawing back and aiming. Got it. Now I'm going to put my thumb on the button. Okay, good. Got it. Okay, here I go. Oh man, I hope I don't miss. They wouldn't say that out loud, right? That thought is in their head, but as soon as they're talking out loud, you'll override that. So you don't get all the thoughts when you're doing this commentary skill building.
And we see Olympic athletes talk to themselves out loud pretty much all the time, right? We see 100-meter swimmers talk to themselves out loud. We see sprinters, right? Like they mutter things.
Mhm.
They have their rituals, right? Like we see that all the time in the Olympics.
Yep. And high level athletes, it's so interesting because when I got to train the Philadelphia Phillies pitching team, and I walked in there, and of course nobody knows who I am or what I do, and all these pitchers are looking at me like, who's this guy? And there was 10 pitching coaches in the room, there were 6 mental performance coaches in the room, and my first question is, coaches, what does a mound visit sound like for you? And they're like, silence, right? Because they've all what I found out the day before, I always have I have the owners or whoever send me the problems that they're having. And what I found out was these coaches take pride in their mound visits. They take pride in going out there and helping the pitcher when the pitcher's having a problem. So I asked them, like, here's the situation. I'm a pitcher. I've just hit a batter. I've walked 3 people, and you're going to do a mound visit with me. What's it sound like? And it was silence for a while, and then one guy finally pipes up and he goes, "Well, I would come out the mountain, I'd ask you how you're feeling." I'm like, "Okay." And I tell you that I'm feeling, not so good. And he's like, "Okay." I'm like, "Well, what else?" He's like, "Well, we'd probably pull you out of the game." I'm like, "Okay, cool. But are you fixing the problem?" Right? And then I looked at the players and I said, "You guys don't know how you do what you do. And therefore, the coaches don't know how you do what you do. So you can't possibly fix a problem. So your mound visit is nonsense. But if you knew how you did it, then you wouldn't have good days and bad days. You would just do it the same way every time. So you would know what you say and when you say it. You would know how to direct your conscious mind into a specific task at a specific moment. And you would know open and closed loop control systems. So you would know when you can say things and when you can't, right? So there's, in sports movements, there's certain times of the movement that you can actually put consciousness into it. And there's certain times you have to keep the consciousness out of it,
Oh yeah.
right? So it's very interesting. So now the mound visit sounds completely different. Like now they can go out there and go, "Hey man, are you saying coil when you lift your leg in your wind up?" "Oh man, coach, I forgot." "Okay, let's get back to the blueprint," right? Just something as simple as that. But if you've never blueprinted how you do what you do, and I make this statement all the time, like, because usually good players become coaches, right? A good employee usually moves up the chain and they usually become a coach of some way. But if you don't know how you do what you do, your skills will die with you.
Very much agree with that. Say that they had a bad day at the office, right? Like a couple of pitches that went wrong, or let's say in tennis, right? Like a very bad set. We see often players talking negatively to themselves. I guess it's the same in bow arcing. If I had a bad shot, like how do I instantly reset? For example, me in business, right? Like if I had, I call these micro traumas, right? Like a bad podcast, a bad sales calls,
Mhm.
shit email that just came true. I reset with, I call it the psychotherapy GPT. I just talk with it. I'm like, hey, this happened. How can I reset now? And psychotherapy GPT is like, yeah, this is useful for you. You're gonna learn off that. You're gonna improve, and then my mind feels at peace, and then I can move on quickly to the next call. In sports or in business, how can you reset quickly after a shit event just happened?
So it's really about, again, blueprinting how you did it, right? Because most people don't have a blueprint. So they're lost in space. And then this negative thing happens. And a problem, what you've done is you've encountered a problem, a bad email, a bad day, a bad pitch, a bad shot, whatever. You've encountered a problem. Problems increase the volume of thoughts. Remember, thoughts have no instruction, thoughts have no strategy, thoughts cannot solve a problem. So when you find yourself stuck in this state of an increased volume of thoughts that you have no control over, it's just a matter of getting back to the blueprint. How did you do what you do normally, right? Like what's a good action that you do? I know that I say this and I say this at this time. You've blueprinted it. You know exactly how you did it, right? So all you're doing is when that increase in volume of thoughts, you need to become aware of that. Like, okay, I'm just running on thoughts right now. I'm pissed off, or, whatever, this person's getting under my skin, or maybe you're in the middle of an argument. You have to stop, pause for a moment, and start thinking. Therefore, you have to start talking in your head, out loud, whatever the situation requires. But again, the ultimate skill is the ability to get loud in your head with the right words at the right moments. However, that conversation must be born out loud. Like, you don't know what you need to say until you say it out loud. You blueprint that, because again, that doesn't have any thoughts involved in it. That's just pure thinking. You blueprint what you said and when you said it, then you take that conversation inside.
Right. It's like overriding the default system. That's how I would describe it. Then how do you A/B test different words, right? Like words have a lot of impacts, a lot of meanings to each and different human beings, right? Like with the values, with the beliefs that we have and how we've been conditioned to perceive these words. How do I A/B test different words I should tell myself?
So that's a very good question. And what happens is people get too hung up on what they should say. They're searching for words. Here's how to find the words. You talk like you're teaching somebody else with the same problem.
Oh, that's
You
good. I
always
like that.
talk like you're teaching someone else with the same problem. And what you will find when you do that is you won't be searching for words anymore, and there'll be much more what I call little speech. Think about if you are trying to put a thread through the head of a needle, right? And you just keep going, you're going too fast, right? So if that's the problem, this is just hypothetical, but if that's the problem, like you're not being precise enough, talk like you're teaching somebody else. And they finally start to do the movement correctly. You're like, okay, easy now. Oh, that's it. Yeah, stay in that. Easy. A little bit left. Okay, yeah, that's good. All right, put that through there. Yeah, okay, got it. That's how we actually teach people. But what we do is, and I used to be hung up on this as well. I used to teach people a mantra. Like when you're shooting your pistol, I would have you take up the pressure on the pressure wall. Then here I go. Actually say here I go. So you prep your mind for concentration. And then the mantra was keep pressing, keep pressing, keep pressing, keep pressing, keep pressing until the gun went off, right? It goes off as a surprise. Therefore, there's no pre-ignition movements linked to the trigger motor program. The round goes in the middle, right? And then when you have somebody else say it back to you, they'd be going, keep pressing, keep pressing, keep pressing. You'd hear the anxiety in their voice, and it's very choppy and all these things, right? I'm like, just talk like you're teaching. Like if you're having trouble getting yourself through this trigger press, talk like you're talking to somebody else that's got the exact same problem, and you are now the instructor. And then you don't search for words.
It's like talking to friends, right? That there's been a lot of research as well. I'm an ultra athlete, and with ultra athletes, it's like talking to yourself with empathy, right? Obviously, I have a hard motherfucker in my head, a Goggins like type of person, but I also have like when I'm in deep pain, deep in the pain cave, I also have like an empathetic person. Okay, Charles, one step in front of the other. You're doing well, Charles. You're like halfway there. Good job. Focus on your breathing, and I think that lowers the cortisol and increase dopamine, maybe serotonin at some stage, and I can get through the finish line.
Those are all mental games. You just played several mental games right there, right? You talked yourself into breathing. You talked yourself into one more step, just one more step. Come on, move your foot. Okay, got it, right? That is putting your conscious mind in a specific task at a specific moment, right? And every one of those steps that you take, the conversation might be slightly different. It's not this scripted thing. It's what you need. It's whatever you need to say at that time to get yourself through that, right? But again, if you were teaching somebody else, like if you're running right alongside somewhere else and you're both deep in the pain cave, right? There's going to be both, come on, bro, one more step. Come on, you can do it. Got it. All right. That's what you're saying to yourself as well. But there's affirmations in there too, right? That empathetic stuff where you're like, okay, you're doing good. You're not going to die, right? That's one of the main things is you are not going to die. Not today, right? People say that, not today. They say easy day. They, military folks, easy day, all these things. And, I recommend, this is going to sound weird. I highly recommend that people get shot at some time in their life. Don't get hit. That would suck, right? But it will change your perspective on life. People are like, oh man, how's it going today, Turner? I'm like, I haven't got shot at yet today. Right. So they're like, oh gosh, that sounds kind of dark and morbid. I'm like, hey man, I got a different outlook on things. Right.
Right. Yeah. Become a cop or maybe start with paintball. Like,
Yeah.
and imagine
Yeah,
like
right. I mean,
paintball are like real bullets.
that, yeah.
What do you think about paintball, by the way? If I want to become a better marksman, and yeah, like if shit ever hits a fan and I want to learn how to defend myself with a gun, is paintball a good start?
Paintball will give you understanding of cover. It will give you understanding of shooting and moving. The work on a paintball gun, right? Usually double finger, right? Very rapid fire. That's not necessarily what you're going to be doing, but it does help in your visual proprioception. It helps in all kinds of things. And there is a pain consequence. So that's the whole thing about highly recommend you get shot at. If it was a paintball, even better, right? Real bullets suck. But
Oh yeah, for sure. Talking about that, what's your relationship with death? You've probably danced with death a couple of times in your career, right? Like how do you perceive that, and what's your philosophy towards it?
well, like my philosophy in life is maximum impact every day. So that if you were to die right now, you can't be saying, I wish I would have, right? Like I could die right now a happy man because, I've got a great family. I've had massive impact on the world with the things that we've done at Shot IQ and Mind IQ and the Turner model. Like my life is fulfilled. I am very content. So if I'm going to go a happy man right now, but I'm going to avoid that because I want to do so many more things. I want to have more impact. So I've I've been shot at several times, and it's a strange feeling, and it usually angers me. Like when I get shot at, especially if I can't return fire or whatever because of a certain, maybe I don't have a shot, or the person does something that, is surrendering or whatever, which is cool, but it's just that they had an opportunity to take my life, and by the grace of God, it didn't happen, right? So, but it's frustrating sometimes. But you know, if you live your life that way, maximum impact constantly, and
Right.
positive impact, obviously, but uh, you should not be regretting anything that you're doing, right?
Right, and that feeling is common among SEALs as well, right? They go to wars and they're being shot at, and generally it's anger. I guess that's the right feeling as well. It's a survival feeling, right? If you want to keep on surviving, you need to
Sure.
have that kind of anger. And when you're getting fucking shot at, like, yeah, in Iraq, for example, you don't really care about returning fire and who's in there. You're literally having your life been put in danger. I want to ask you. The transition between, yeah, being a cop and being a business owner, like, is that less exciting for you? How did you manage that?
Well, I when I was a police officer about 2015, that's when I got in my shooting, that hostage rescue at work. And then my son won the Vegas tournament in 2022. and at 15 years old. And so in that time period, like after my hostage rescue, I'm like, okay, shot IQ is a real thing. Like this is no longer Joel Turner's opinion on how your brain works in high stress events. Like we just went through this situation, high stress, we were successful, and these are all the things that I put in place. This is how I did what I did. And so really packaging that into Shot IQ, and then, that being a side business for several years until 2022 when my son won Vegas, which is the largest indoor archery tournament in the world. And he won it the day after he turned 15 as a professional archer. And because he couldn't turn pro till he was 15. So in the middle of that tournament, he turned 15 years old. So I went and got him his pro card, and then he won it the next day. Well, that gave Shot IQ the credibility it needed for me to realize that by remaining in law enforcement, I was losing money.
Yep.
And so once that side business got to that point, I'm like, okay, this needs to branch out so I can have more impact. I can train more people. I can, have this impact that I'm seeking on a constant basis, because, there's all the crazy wild stuff of being a cop, but then there's hours and days of mundane driving a patrol car around where I'm going, what am I doing right now? I'm wasting my time. I don't know how much time I have, and I'm wasting it. I'm wasting hours in a day, and I don't like that, right? Where I could be doing something else, making money, have an impact, whatever. And so that's when I retired in 2022. So
that exploded pretty quickly. What do you foresee for your son, and what kind of legacy have you left in him?
So the cool thing about my son Bodie is he's a professional archer. He just signed a good contract with a bow company, so he makes a very comfortable living at he's now 18 years old. He just won Vegas again. So he won Vegas twice before he graduated from high school.
That's insane.
He just graduated high school a few days ago. But, the legacy is Bodie. The difference between Bodie and I is that we understand how we do what we do. Like I wasn't a good shooter growing up. I wasn't a Bodie Turner. I was a Joel Turner, right? And I wasn't good. But through all the research that we've done and the situations and the experiences that I've had and being able to package this in this, in Shot IQ and all the other things that we do, the beautiful thing is watching my son teach. When I watch my son teach, it's just, it brings tears to my eyes to watch him do what he does. And he's a better shot than the old man by a little bit, but he is, phenomenal young man, very humble, and people congratulate me all the time for raising such a fine young man, and or my wife and I for raising such a fine young man. And it's just like, it literally brings tears to my eyes. So the legacy will live on, and it lives on in online courses. Like, it's funny because when I'm hopefully grow to the ripe old age of 85 or whatever, I'll be able to look back at the Shot IQ online course when I was in my 40s, right? So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, hell of accomplishment. Congrats on that. And to Bodie, like I often reflect when I was that age, a bit lost in life, partying, and not doing the right things. And it would have been very nice to start out life on that foot with like sponsorships and winning stuff, and most importantly with the mindset, right, and the mentality. I would call that the killer mindset, sort of like keeping your shit and managing stress and getting shit done. So yeah, congrats to that young man right there. You make me think a lot of Cam Hines. You hang out with Cam a little bit. Like, what are your thoughts on
I
that
don't
guy?
hang out with Cam. I've only met Cam one time, and it was a funny story because he, he was just, this is 2015, and Cam Hanes is just becoming this big deal. And I met him at a Pope and Young Club convention. I was doing a seminar there, and he was walking around with his bow. He's being led around by people. So he's walking around with his bow, and he steps into my, I'm like, hey, Cam, come over here. And that's the only time I've ever met him. we've texted back and forth a little bit in the meantime, but I was not the instructor that I am now. And I used to be fairly pushy in my instruction, not realizing it, just kind of the way that I am. And I think I kind of pissed him off a little bit because I had him do what we call the signature test, which is it demonstrates open and closed loop control systems. And so I'm having him do it, and it's in front of a bunch of people, and it was not the right time to do that. But so I don't know. I don't know how Cam feels about me. I like what he does, and but we don't hang out together. But maybe someday.
Yeah, maybe it's like the cop in you, right? Because cops are used to have control in situations, and then you put like two alphas in one cage,
Yeah, it was funny, and I've run into that several times when I was what I call a young instructor, and it bit me in the butt just about every time. So now I'm a bit like, do you want some information or do you not want information?
Yeah, that's the first question, right?
Like,
would you like some advice, right? Like sometimes my parents, they give me advice, unwarranted advice. And I'm like, did I ask you for that? You know, and
yeah, right.
I know you're my parents and you're gonna stay my dad, but yeah, please let me my freedom, right? Your business, it has done pretty well for itself. Has it exploded since Joe Rogan?
Yeah, it did. That just gave me wings essentially. And it gave me all these other things because I had to put so much more thinking into it. So that's when, after that's when the person asked me, hey, can you define the mental game? I'm like, oh, mental game of what? He said, that's all I'm asking. I'm like, okay. So, I came up with that answer of understanding where, when, and how to direct your conscious mind into a specific task at a specific moment. Once we define that, it's easy to plug problems into that equation. And then, in the middle of a hunt in New Zealand, my buddy from Australia, Ben Mayer, his brother is a Buddhist monk. And that's where he gave me the saying, thoughts aren't thinking. I'm like, whoa, that's pretty profound, right? And then I kind of dissected that. He explained to me how he uses that in his business. And then I expanded on that with, thoughts are what you hear, thinking is what you say. Problems are nothing more than an increase in the volume of thought, something you have no control over, but you can always control the volume of your thinking. Then coming upon the ultimate skill of the human being. I'm like, and all the instruction that we've done, this is the skill I've been chasing, but I wasn't seeing it, right? I wasn't having the student get loud with the right words at the right moment. I kept guiding them through it. And I would ask them, are you saying that? Like, oh yeah, I'm saying that. Well, if it wasn't out loud, I had no idea. I had no view into the brain of the student. Right. So now I know that's the skill. So now we use an archery shot to practice getting loud with the right words at the right moment. And, I had open and closed loop control systems from when I was a firearms instructor at the academy. So it's, that those four pillars, the ultimate skill of the human being, open and closed loop control systems, thoughts aren't thinking, and the mental game equation. When you have all of those four pillars mastered, you can handle damn near anything. And you understand how you did it so that you can repeat it.
Yeah, which is a very important part, right? It's the same challenge we're facing in AI and AGI right now. It's getting to results, but we don't know why. And if we don't know why, we can't really advance and scale the science. You talked about meditation, right? That there's this, was it like the archery book or whatever by this Japan? Yes, that one. For you, is archery, is it your form of meditation, or do you also have like a meditation practice on the side?
No, archery is what I use for all of my mental control practices.
Are we getting to the same results? For example, I have various forms of meditations, boxing, kickboxing is certainly one, sparring, hanging out on my hammock, looking at the stars. Do I get to the same result as if I would just close my eyes and sit cross-legged and meditate?
Well, I don't know if the results would be as high. There's certain places, like in Montana where I live, you can just stop moving, stop breathing for just a moment, and it's complete silence. There's not a sound. There's no birds, there's no wind, there's no nothing.
Wow.
Like it's eerie. In this one place you can just stop, and I've been out there at night and just laying on the ground, 5 degrees at night. This is a form of meditation, I guess, if you will. I was wolf hunting at the time, but I'm laying there and it's so quiet that I can hear the snowflakes hitting my face.
Oh my God.
That is quiet, right? So when you're in those situations, that is where you really realize how loud the thoughts are, right? And it's easy to override those thoughts when you're in those situations because you're thinking, right? Anything you say is like deafening in your head. So, but when you're doing archery or you're doing kickboxing or whatever, you're practicing getting loud. You're practicing overriding the central nervous system. You're practicing overriding the thoughts that are coming in that you have no control over. So, I think that's more powerful than simply sitting there with your legs crossed in a meditative state. But I don't know because I don't do that, right? I have my own meditations on the top of the mountain when I'm wolf hunting or whatever at night. So I've never done that form of meditation, but I shoot my bow constantly. I mean, I shoot hundreds of arrows a day because it's basically my job now, if you want to call it that. But I am constantly working on mental control. I put myself in high stress situations, be that bow hunting or high stress tournaments, whatever it may be. Right. And then from what I learned from the yellow line on the floor in that tournament, the only thing that really makes me shake is indoor archery. I don't know why, but at your first scoring end, I'm up there shaking like a dog crapping tacks. Right. And so because of that, because I know that happens in my body when I get that adrenaline dump, that's why I use my practice arrows to shoot. I shoot on one foot, right? So that I see this aim that's all over the place, standing on one foot. My conscious mind is being drawn into the fact of the aim is huge. Like, holy mackerel, that thing's huge, or I'm going to fall over. So balance, it gets drawn to balance very easily. Obviously, fix the problem. Put your foot down, pick it back up, go back into that big aim and practice not caring about it. Right? Practice pulling your conscious mind out of that big aim and out of the balance and putting it where it needs to be in your shot execution. So that's what I use for meditation.
Yeah, I get the shakes before 100K race. I'm doing 110K. On the start line, we all get it, right? Like we're jittery and we start out super fast before sparring, especially if the other guy's pretty big and haven't fought him before. I'm gonna be shaky. I know a bunch of UFC fighter fight this through like cockiness, right? We can think of Connor, we can think of Sean O'Malley, one of my favorite fighters. Do you think that can be a remedy? Like when we hit D-Day, like I tend to be a pretty cocky individual as well. Like, do you think that like a testosterone injection can calm you down, or it's purely mental?
Well, I mean, it's different in those sports that you're talking about because it really helps you in those sports, right? You get shaky because you've got more adrenaline in your system, your increased respiration, increased perspiration. These are all fight or flight, responses of the body. They're physiological changes, and they actually help you in those particular sports because your movements are open loop. They're supposed to be fluid. Don't have to gain feedback within them. You just got to go. It's supposed to be automatic because you've done it thousands of times, right? But in archery, imagine trying to thread a needle when you're shaking that much, right?
Impossible.
Trying to thread a needle, and then when you put the thread, when you finally get it through the hole of the needle, the whole thing explodes. Right? So you're having to override your central nervous system and do these very minute pressure increases on a trigger. That's why I say it's the highest level of human concentration. Right?
Must be really frustrating also.
Oh, it is, right? But if you know the problem's coming and you've seen the problem before, it'd be like sparring the same guy over and over and over again, right? Because you get to shoot multiple arrows at the same target, right? And that physiological change somewhat subsides as you get further into your match or whatever. But at the start, it's a bugger. Like you really gotta buckle down. You got to get loud with the right words at the right moment, right? And understand that you're going to shake, but you've practiced for that. You've seen it. You've seen it a million times. So practice for it. It's funny because like when you shoot, you've never shot a big archery tournament probably, right?
No, never.
So like you get, like, let's say at Vegas, right? You get 2 practice ends. So you get 2 sessions of practice, 3, you can shoot as many arrows as you want, but usually people shoot their normal 3 arrows. And then you get another practice in, and then you go into, and they make this big, now this is your first scoring end. And that's where everybody loses their business, right? But in those practice ends, practice the problem that's about to happen. For me, it's shaking, right? But that has gotten less and less over the years because I know it's coming now, right? And I practice for it. So in my practice ends, that's when I'm shooting on 1 foot. And people are like, what are you doing, Turner? I'm like, I'm practicing for a problem that's about to happen. And I know it's going to happen. I'm not going to be able to stop it. I can't control how much adrenaline's dumped into my system. But everybody else is just trying to shoot X's in their practice rounds. I'm like, not me. I don't care if I hit my neighbor's target. I don't care because I'm executing a shot perfectly. Right.
Yeah, personally, maybe I tried to biohack my way out of it, like a hard sauna, hard physical activity before it, or CBD. Maybe you've already done that and you can't just control it. What does your day-to-day look like on a daily basis? Like what habits do you nurture to improve your shots?
So I get up and I usually will go work out, and I work out with my bow. So I'll go out,
Love
do
it.
squats, shoot an arrow, do push-ups, shoot an arrow, do kettlebell stuff, shoot an arrow, right? And that's just getting, fatigue in my muscles so that maybe I shake a little bit more. When there's snow on the ground, I go do a snow bath. Then I shoot my bow with my hands are really cold, right? So any problem that I encounter, I practice for it. And so that's my daily thing is I usually try to add some physical exertion into my shooting. I'll do hill sprints, whatever that may be. So you're breathing hard, so you get practice in a cleansing breath and a firing breath and all that stuff. So whatever problems I run into or I have run into in my life, I practice the solution to those problems in my daily routines.
Any supplements, specific diets as well?
No, I just eat a lot of elk meat.
The best, right? The
Yeah,
best, the cleanest meats,
right.
no probiotics, which gets me to the next topic. Yeah, hunting, right? And
Mhm.
just like MMA, a bunch of people think it's savage, it's prehistoric.
Mhm.
But I think like getting back to these disciplines are good for us humans. I think we're not adapting to these times, like with too much technology, too much stress, anxiety, stimulus, right? So I think, and also it's your own meat, right? Like at the
Right.
grocery store, it's pretty much the same. So
Sure.
what do you say to people that think it's a barbaric practice?
So what I will say is this. When I was a police officer for almost 21 years, I never went to a home where the family hunted, right? I never went to a home for domestic violence or any of these problems with a family that hunted, especially if they hunted together, right? So I truly believe that hunting, I mean, it's where we all came from. If your ancestors were not successful hunters, you wouldn't be here, right? So we all came from it, whether we like it or not. And I have worked on cattle feedlots. I don't want anything to do with that, right? Now, my family in Montana, they raise cattle, but there it's all the grass fed, all natural stuff. So that's a different story, but it's still not as clean as wild game. I want to know where my meat comes from. And I truly believe that that's what we're supposed to be doing. Like you take a human male that doesn't hunt. They usually have some other type of outlet, right? And hopefully that outlet is something like fighting, lifting, whatever, right? It's still, as long as it goes to something that's fairly primal, cool, right? Their life now has purpose and they have things to look forward to every day. people that don't do that don't follow some of these primal urges, it seems like they're always seeking something.
Yeah.
They're always seeking some artificial satisfaction somewhere. And, and you ask these people, have you ever sat on a mountaintop and just stopped for a moment and had a moment of silence to yourself? Or have you ever went on a trip somewhere where you had to rely on yourself or someone else to survive? Right? And that's where these bonds get built in the military and amongst hunters. And I mean, it's just a different way of life that's very purposeful. And, people say, well, I could never kill anything. Okay, well, that's how we all got here, right? I mean, we are the top of the food chain for a reason. So that's what we got to do. Hang on one second for me. Hang on.
Yeah, and just to add on that while you're responding to Dor, I think that vegan stuff doesn't really work. Like us humans, we were built to hunt and go fetch, and like that's why we're apex predator, right? So I just think it's a misalignment between people that think that the world is all like flowers and then sun. It's not like that. Even when you're stepping on your floor, you're killing bacteria, you're killing like all kinds of things. It's really about the laws of evolution. So I fully aligned with that. And people order toxic meat like from the supermarket. I do, arguably, because Mexico, I need to find like a permit to go hunt some stuff. But I think most importantly, more deeply, you're connected to your food. You're connected to nature, right? And with that, you're more healthy. And yes, I think that people that do not practice these things, they tend to find an outlet. They lash out on people, on their clients, on their employees, on their wives and kids and dogs. So I think it's quite healthy to have that kind of hobby or purpose, right? To lift heavy stuff and to fight.
It's a lifestyle, right? Like I can't imagine not hunting.
Yeah,
I've done it my whole life. Like literally, my dad had me out there and I was still in diapers.
Yeah.
And it's what I've known, but it's what I see in the world. Like, why is it that when little kids back in the day, like probably as late as early 2000s, when you would ask a child to look up in the sky into the clouds, what did they see in the clouds? And it was almost always animals, right? Whatever they would see in the cloud, they would almost always conjured up into some type of animal. I don't know that that's true to this day.
What would they see nowadays?
I don't know. I mean, they may see
Fortnite.
They may see a character from their video game or their cell phone or whatever. I don't know what they see now, but it was interesting. We did a study in college with that, and the kids they would see animals. Right. And that's that connection. It's totally, unsolicited. Just what do you see? Right. And it was amazing. And I don't know. I mean, I would have to run the test now, but I don't know what they would see now.
Yeah, I was born in '93. I still see animals in the sky. I was raised on video games and stuff, which has given me a major edge in business. But I think it's quite dangerous to put a screen in front of their face. And nowadays we see porn addiction and all of these toxic things. I think it's time that societies reevaluates its value, especially in America. Right nowadays, we're seeing a lot of division. Right, like people cannot even have a conversation without getting angry, and I think it's just the basic operating system is corrupted. But Joel, I know you're on time here. Where can people find out more about you?
So all my online courses are on shotiq.com. I've got courses in archery, rifle, and pistol on that, and also mindiq.com. That's where my Mind IQ course, and that's for cerebral problems like anxiety and such, and also for all of your sports movements. So that's mindiq.com. And turnermodel.com is the website where you can kind of find out the story of me and how this all came to be. So
I was Joel and Charles for another Charles Cormier